With energy prices soaring across the UK, US and Australia, is running an electric car still cheaper than a combustion one? And at what point does electric cost the same as combustion? That's what we'll be investigating in this video for the US, UK and Australia, converting it all to US dollars, UK pounds, Australian dollars and the euro, so we can compare how much we all pay in each country. And I can't believe the differences we pay for effectively the same thing. There was a few surprises along the way, namely that the UK is not the most expensive pence per mile when everything else is taken into account. With energy prices skyrocketing for both oil and gas, it's going to have a significant impact on the price of electricity and petrol alike. Before the conflict in Europe began, the UK had seen some sharp increases in electricity prices, with some rates doubling, whilst oil remained pretty stable. With no end in sight of the price rises of oil and gas, and the US and UK looking to switch away from supplies from Russia, I can only see these price rises continuing to climb. I'm going to be doing a price breakdown of all the running costs for electric versus combustion, with some projections at different price points for the UK, US and Australia. One of the massive selling points of electric cars was that although they're more expensive up front, they're far cheaper to run. Before the energy crisis, you could be looking at spending about 90% less on electricity compared to that of diesel or petrol. Before we get on to the projections and pricing for each country, I'm going to explain my workings so you can see where the figures are coming from, because it's a little bit confusing, I'm not going to lie. To save me saying petrol, diesel or gasoline all the time, I'm just going to lump them all together and say fuel, because the prices are rising that frequently in the UK anyway. I don't think it's going to make a massive difference. It'll average out between the two. And when we refer to the price of fuel, we all say different things. So some people will say price per gallon, some people will say price per litre. And don't forget also we've got a price per kilowatt hour, so somehow we have to compare kilowatts to gallons or litres. Well, to create the same amount of energy you generate from burning 1 US gallon of petrol or gasoline would take 33.7 kilowatt hours of electricity. So from that we could say that 1 US gallon is equal to 33.7 kilowatt hours. Now we have something to compare it to, because we know how many miles per gallon a combustion car does, and we know how many miles per kilowatt hour an electric car does. So we can effectively work out an MPG equivalent for the electric car. Hope you're still with me on this. There's a few more to go, but I want you to know that my working is robust. Just to throw some more into the mix, a UK gallon is different to a US gallon. So a US gallon is equivalent to 3.78 litres, whereas a UK gallon is equivalent to 4.55 litres. To make it a lot simpler, I'm going to be talking in litres, because thankfully that doesn't change no matter what country you're in. So from that, we can get 33.7 kilowatt hours is equivalent to the US gallon. So for a litre, that works as 8.92 kilowatt hours per litre. So at the end of 2021, where were we in the cost per mile of combustion versus electric around the world? Well, I looked at fuel prices on average, because it varies depending on different regions, for the US, UK and Australia. At the end of 2021, the price per litre in the US was just 88 cents, which works out as 67p in the UK. If you look at UK prices then, it was almost double that at £1.34, which works out about $1.50 in the US. Australia weren't having too bad a time of it either, because in Australian dollars they were paying $1.52 per litre, which works out as 95 cents in the US or 84 pence in the UK. And just to make things even more complicated, as if they weren't already, the average MPG per vehicle, or litres per 100 kilometres, is different for each country. I have taken that into account of my calculations for cost per mile. So in the US, the average MPG was 25 or 9.3 litres per 100 kilometres. In the UK, it's 52 or 5.4 litres per 100 kilometres. And in Australia, it's 25 MPG or 11.1 litres per 100 kilometres. Which means, as of August in 2021, it costs 13 cents per mile in the US, which works out as 11 pence in the UK and 18 cents in Australia. It was 12 pence per mile in the UK, which works out as 16 cents in the US and 21 cents in Australia. And then in Australia, it was 28 cents per mile, which works out as 16 pence or 20 cents in the US. So how's that going to compare with electricity prices, and how's it going to compare with the spikes in fuel prices we're experiencing around the world right now? Well, electricity prices vary across all the different regions. So to work out the costs, I've just taken an average for each country I've been looking at the end of 2021. The price in the US was just 13.8 cents per kilowatt hour. In the UK, it was 21 pence per kilowatt hour. And in Australia, it was 27 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, assuming that a litre of electricity is equivalent to 8.92 kilowatt hours, we can work out how much the price per litre is. So in the US, it was $1.23. In the UK, it was £1.87. And in Australia, it was $2.40. So you're probably already thinking, well, hang on a minute, the cost per litre of electricity is way more expensive than the cost per litre of fuel, which you'd be right. But you're forgetting one thing, the efficiency of an electric car is way better and will go a lot further on that litre of fuel than it would a combustion car. How far will depend on the brand. Now, I'm going to be comparing my lovely Tesla Model 3 here that has a whopping 141 mpg equivalent, which means it'll only take 1.67 litres of fuel to go 100 kilometres. So after looking at the electricity rates for all of the countries and taking that into account, I've got some cost per mile of the electric car at the end of 2021. And in Australia, it was just 6.5 cents per mile. In the UK, it was 5 pence per mile, and the US wins with an average of 3.3 cents per mile. So clearly the electric car is the winner at the end of 2021, but where does it sit with today's prices? Because in the UK at least, we're seeing huge increases in the cost of electricity. And with the global uncertainty of oil and gas supplies, who knows where it's going to be in the next few weeks. So where's it going to have to be before the electric and combustion car actually equal out and cost the same to run? Well, as of the day of filming, because I don't know where you are, but the prices in the UK are going up by the hour for fuel. The prices were as follows for a combustion car on the pence per mile. In the US, it was 16.7 cents per mile. In the UK, it was 16 pence per mile. And in Australia, it was 33 cents per mile. The price per kilowatt hour in the US and Australia seems pretty stable, to be honest, with the US only expecting a price increase of 1 cent per kilowatt hour. And Australia got it even better because they're expecting a 1 cent fall by 2024 in the price of their electricity. This could all change, obviously, with the current climate, though. In the UK, we're seeing much higher prices though. Before the crisis, the prices were going up by about 33% on average, taking the average pence per kilowatt hour to 28p. But on some tariffs, it's actually gone up 100% to 49 pence per kilowatt hour. So whilst the cost per mile for the US and Australia won't have changed much since the end of 2021, in the UK it's a completely different story. The cost per mile for an electric car in the UK currently stands at 6.7 pence if you're on the average tariff price of 28p. If you're on that 49p tariff though, it changes quite dramatically to 11.7 pence per mile for an electric car. So on that higher tariff, if we look back 6 months ago what it cost to run a combustion car, it's actually not far off because it was 12 pence per mile to run a combustion car then. So unbelievably, if fuel prices come down because we increase oil production to mitigate the lack of supply from Russia, and electricity prices continue to climb, it's not far off being more expensive to run an electric car in the UK on the average tariff than it would be a combustion car. For the US and Australia, you're in a bit safer position because for the break-even point, when an electric car becomes as expensive to run as a combustion car at all today's prices, you're looking at electricity to have to cost you 70 cents per kilowatt hour in the US and $1.40 in Australia, which I don't think is going to happen anytime soon. There is some light at the end of the tunnel though for UK consumers because thankfully lots of electricity companies now offer EV tariffs, which give you cheaper rates for overnight charging. So for example, I'm on Octopus Go between the hours of midnight and 4:30 in the morning. I get 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour. Loads of EV tariffs out there. Shop around, find out what's best for you. If you do switch to Octopus Go, make sure you use my referral code in the description below because then we both get £50 off our next electricity bill, and that will definitely help with the increase in prices. On the 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour rate, it looks a lot better. So it works out as 1.8 pence per mile on that rate. So thankfully, if you want to save money on your driving costs, electric is still best, costing you about a tenth of what it would do on fuel. Massive savings to be had. You just need to shop around for that cheap electricity tariff. The US is still the most favourable overall for running costs of electricity and gasoline, but where the true savings can be had is Australia, where the difference between gasoline or petrol and electricity are the biggest. I know that was all very confusing and numbery, so well done for sticking with me. The basic message, electric is best and way cheaper. If you got anything out of that video, please leave a thumbs up because not only does it help the video and the channel, it puts a smile on this face and I appreciate it a lot. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.